Chapter 5 discusses working with culturally diverse families, and as we said before, there's a lot of variability here, and every culture is a little bit different. Each individual family culture is a bit different. So once again, we're looking at principles and ideas that have been established by research, but the ways of applying them are as diverse as the families that we work with. Some of the learning objectives include discussing the differences in culture and ethnicity and the dynamics associated with culturally diverse families, describing matters pertaining to working with LGBTQ families, exploring issues involved in working with culturally diverse families, understanding the dynamics involved in LGBTQ families and diverse family groups, and examining guidelines for working with culturally diverse families and the role of the therapist in the process. Terms related to culture, multicultural, intercultural couples. This could be looking at integration, coexistence, or lack of resolution, differences in worldview, and for the therapist, cultural competency. Dynamics of culturally diverse families, overt and covert criticism of patterns of family interaction, appearance, access to mental health services, and economics all connect to culturally diverse families and considerations. Issues in working with culturally diverse families may include sensitivity, experience, acceptance, ingenuity, specificity, and intervention. And once again, part of this may be as a therapist or as someone working with culturally diverse families, allowing families to teach you and to engage you. They're the experts in their culture and the understanding of that. And so sometimes being able to and willing to admit and be open to learning about the process and about the culture of the family that you're working with is a very strong asset to have. Working with LGBTQ families, work with self to sort out feelings. People have very strong opinions. This is highly politicized. And so part of this is understanding our own biases that we may have and really being self-aware and taking stock of that. Addressing both external and internal issues that are associated with the LGBTQ couple. And again, these can be both positive and negative things that may play a role, and could be things that are perpetrated or kind of perpetuated by society. Working with society at large and its institutions to deal with matters of prejudice and discrimination, and recognizing that LGBTQ families may not just be dealing with issues connected to sexual identity. Really matters are included that are the same as any other family may deal with. So it's important that how we treat and work with families isn't just overshadowed by the label here. African American families have relied oftentimes upon extended family networks traditionally, and this is in regards to taking care of needs. Psychoeducation, especially with single-parent African American women, can be very effective in terms of helping families and their effectiveness and function. There's no prescriptive approach. It's important for a family therapist to be attuned to African American experiences and perceptions, as well as the historical and social backgrounds of African American families in the United States. It's important that therapists have an understanding of multi-generational family systems, and it's important to address social and institutional issues that have adversely affected African Americans and families. Working with Asian American families, taking acculturation into account is a really important aspect. Being aware of the effect of racism on Asian American families, which is often overlooked. Recognizing the potential importance of being knowledgeable of Asian philosophers, thinkers, and specific cultural viewpoints. Creating a safe and nurturing environment that mirrors a supportive and caring family. Likewise, assessing support available to the family, assessing the past history, potentially of immigration. Again, that doesn't affect every single family, just kind of depending. Establishing professional credibility, being problem-focused and present-focused, being directive in guiding the therapeutic process, and providing reframing that encourages the family. Working with Hispanic Latino families, developing a basic knowledge about cultural traditions before attempting to employ treatment modalities. And again, there are very many diverse cultures represented by Hispanic and Latinx families, so it's important to recognize that. Taking into account values like personalismo, being aware of socioeconomic factors that may impact families, assessing for acculturation level as well as acculturative stress, utilizing outside resources to facilitate treatment. Doesn't necessarily have to be the Catholic Church, but thinking about different religious or community organizations and groups that may be helpful. Being aware of potential family hierarchy and roles. Challenges for American Indian, Alaska Native families. Breaking up or dysfunctionality of families, geography and culture or biculturalism, things connected sometimes to socioeconomic status, And again, this doesn't impact everyone, but we do see higher representation sometimes in Native populations. Working with Native populations, recognizing that there's no one-size-fits-all model, developing cultural knowledge, sensitivity, and innovation, building relationships with local leaders and communities, recognizing culturally sensitive techniques, recognizing the interconnectedness between physical and psychological distress, considering the use of home-based therapy, and considering therapeutic techniques that are directive. Working with Arab American families, recognizing that Arab Americans may be reluctant to seek family therapy and being aware of the potential emphasis on honor and shame, being aware of cultural context in which the family operates, being mindful of the issue of leadership and importance of authority figures in the family, being attentive to the role of the extended family in decision-making, and being aware of the influence of culture on therapy. Likewise, considering a strengths-based approach and balancing activity so as not to be seen as a rescuer or a threat, considering exploring identity issues, concentrating on couple dynamics, and when appropriate, focusing on religious and other group support. Working with European Americans, considering using an existential approach as it focuses on uniqueness, consider incorporating universal techniques such as genuineness, empathic understanding, and structuring. Working with intercultural families, strategies for helping intercultural couples, communication, talking and interacting with one's partner on matters relating to both individuals and the relationship so that misunderstanding and resentment does not build up. Compromise, settling disputes by each side making concessions, and cultural and differentiation of self are factors conducive to intercultural competence in clinical practice. Coping strategies of intercultural couples. Integration, melding both cultures together and celebrating each. Coexistence, partners retaining their separate cultures. Singular assimilation, one partner being more assimilated to the partner's culture than vice versa. Lack of resolution, couples not knowing what to do with or having conflict around difference. Use of humor, recognition of similarities, gender role flexibility, and general appreciation for other cultures also help intercultural couples. The roles of the therapist, being aware of own cultural heritage and respecting cultural differences, being comfortable with differences that exist between themselves and the clients with regard to cultural backgrounds and beliefs, being sensitive to circumstances that may dictate referral of a family, being knowledgeable of own racist attitudes, beliefs, and feelings. Escape. There are 4 major investments, and this is according to Boyd in 1987. Engagement with families and process, sensitivity to culture, awareness of family potential, knowledge of the environment. So again, these are just some briefly stated ideas about culture. Obviously, culture is very rich. Family cultures are very rich. Each family is very different. And so as you see a family, you can't just only rely on these generalizations that we've seen here in the text. These are just some guidelines that may be helpful. But once again, we do a real disservice to any family of any culture if we have presuppositions or ideas just based on a cultural label. And so it's really important, again, for us to be aware of our own biases and be open to learning and engaging and again, tailoring what we do, how we think, and the ways that we interact with families based on the individual needs and ideas and structures of those families.